Hi, welcome back. Today I'm talking about a very skin specific routine. I understand this routine may not apply to everyone. It kind of falls along the category of, I did a video years ago. I'm talking like, it had to have been 6 or 7 years ago, and it was my dry skin makeup routine. And for some reason, that video must still be getting recommended because I get comments on it all the time. So this is kind of like an updated version. Here we are, like 6 years later. I still have eczema. It's probably like 5 or 10 times worse than what it was even 5 or 6 years ago. I'm also dealing with some weird like autoimmune things where my face gets super red. And this always happens to me, especially at the end of summer. I debated on whether to do this video today because I know I'm gonna get comments saying, your skin's not red. What redness? I don't see redness. I'm literally going to insert a photo of what my skin looked like one day ago. And so it's one thing to deal with dry skin because when I just have dry, flaky skin, I'll often reach for a nice sheer, really dewy light coverage product. But when you're dealing with redness or discoloration and you kind of want to counteract that, it can get a little bit tricky because the more products you layer, the more dry your skin's going to look. So I wanted to share the routine that I use to conceal redness. But this really doesn't have like a ton to do with concealing the redness because obviously we can do that with any full coverage product. It's really about my method and layering techniques to where in the end it comes out looking like almost like you just have a really fresh, like maybe BB cream on, a really fresh face look that's not going to enhance texture or dryness. You get what I'm saying? That was long. Let's just start. First thing I always do is almost overhydrate my skin. I will apply like double the amount of moisturizer that I would before applying my makeup. And I just always feel like this adds some extra hydration throughout the day. But not only that, since we are using a product, the foundation I'm going to be using is more in the medium coverage range. It helps to not necessarily sheer it out, but it adds a little bit of water content and gives it a fresher look. So the two that I really like using are the Tatcha creams. There's the Dewy Skin Cream and the Water Cream. What's weird is the Water Cream I think is really meant for more normal to combination skin, but I find myself using it over the Dewy Cream. The Dewy Cream I will really go in with if I'm just like flake city all over. But I will apply a lot to my dry areas, and that's mainly like the outer perimeters of my face. I don't really get a ton of dryness throughout here or my forehead. It's really this outer section. So I go in and I add a few layers of moisturizer first. My eyelids are also quite patchy right now, so I'm just going to add a little bit around the eye area. So I just let that sit for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then where I have extra redness and texture, which right now is really just through this particular area, I'll go in with something that is pore or line smoothing. I have this pore line filler from NARS. It's literally this tiny stick. I have been using this for years, and I recommend it in a lot of my mature skin videos because I think it's great for target application along any textured area, or also I use it sometimes on my forehead lines. And it's such a really just simple product, but it really does make a difference in helping create a barrier between your foundation and the texture on your skin. So I'll literally just do a few swipes, and I don't know if the camera is going to pick up how automatically it just creates this very smooth canvas. You could also use something like the Smashbox Pore Minimizing Primer, the Smashbox Original like gel primer, anything that has that smoothing quality. That's when I always recommend using a primer, is if you do have that added texture. So this is one of the few times that I will go in and use like a preventative priming product. Okay, so this could possibly be one of the most important parts because this is where all of your coverage is going to come from. Like I said, generally if my skin's just really dry and I don't have any redness going on, anything that needs to be super concealed, I'll just use a BB cream. But in the case of this right here, I will opt for something that is more medium coverage. The formula on what you're going to use for this really kind of makes or breaks how your makeup's going to look. So I have two examples here that I really love using that I personally think sit well on textured dry skin. And the first is the Shiseido Synchro Skin Self Refreshing Foundation. I don't think I've used this one a lot on camera yet, but this is the texture you want to look for is a very thin texture. You want pigment, but the texture of the foundation to be thin. So almost like an Armani Luminous Silk. This is a really good option. I think this is the one I'm going to use today. One of my all-time favorites is the bareMinerals Bare Pro. This is a great example of a thin foundation that holds a lot of pigment. So I'm going to put some examples now below if you don't quite understand what I'm talking about. Basically, you just don't want a foundation that comes out with a thicker texture and also holds a lot of pigment. You really want that nice, thin, flexible texture so you can play around with it and so it just looks a little bit more lightweight on the skin. So I just placed one pump on the back of my hand, and I always use a beauty blender or some type of damp sponge when I have dryness, and also when I am working with a medium coverage foundation, mainly because with a brush, oftentimes, you can disturb the dry areas even further. And this just feels so refreshing on dry or flaking skin to have a nice cooling sponge on the face. So I'm just going to take my foundation, and what I do, since this is more of a pigmented foundation, I first start focusing it in the areas where I need it most. And so right now, that is this whole area right here. Then when I start to lose the product on my sponge, or my product just starts thinning out, I'll work it out to the areas that don't need as much coverage, if that makes sense. And I think by doing this, it really gives you an anchor of how much product you're going to need. You're really going in there and targeting those, I hate to say problem areas, but the areas that you just desire to cover more. That'll really give you a nice map for ultimately using a little less product on the outer perimeters of the face, which on me, that's good because the outer perimeters are where my dryness and my flaking are. So now that I have this main area covered to the amount that I like, I'm just going to start working the excess product outwards. So basically, it's like I've got full coverage in the center, but then the rest of my face that doesn't really need much. It's like I'm wearing a sheer, nice, lightweight, breathable foundation. So just a way that you can kind of multitask with a fuller coverage foundation as well. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm buying a full coverage foundation, this is the way I need to wear it. You can mix it with your moisturizer to create a tinted moisturizer. You can apply it in certain areas in full coverage and sheer it out like I'm doing. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate a fuller coverage product. And that's why in my minimalist style videos, I talk about just owning a medium to full coverage foundation. And you can do so many different things with it. So yeah, we have coverage going on here where we need it. And then everything else is just light, refreshing, smooth, no fuss. So one product I absolutely stay away from when I'm dealing with skin like this is actually concealer. The whole point of using a foundation that has more pigment to it is kind of to double down on coverage. So again, if you are familiar with having dryness and texture, the more product you layer on top of it, generally the more noticeable it's going to be by the end of the day. So we're trying to get the coverage with the least amount of product. So I absolutely 100% always skip concealer when my skin is feeling crusty and terrible, basically. So let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the routine. Now, the rest of the routine is not anything riveting. I will say that I almost always skip on like powder bronzer. Sometimes I won't even wear powder on my skin. This Shiseido foundation is just a nice kind of satin finish. It really doesn't possess like a ton of glow. So if I'm feeling really flaky and dry, I'll completely skip on powder. But I am going to go ahead and finish up how I do my entire face in general. So I'm taking a little bit of cream bronzer. This is one that I used recently in my products I low-key dislike. And I had mentioned I had only used it like 1 or 2 times. And I got a lot of compliments on it in that video. And I was like, well, you know what? We'll give it another shot. So I'm pulling it out again. Hands down, a liquid product like this just looks so hyper realistic and skin-like. So I would highly recommend investing in some type of liquid or cream bronzer if you do have a similar skin type to me. So basically, if you haven't caught on by now, we're just trying to make the skin look like skin with more fuller coverage products. So that's the gist. Did someone say Daniel Sandler watercolor? Because if not, then I'm hurt. You don't know me personally. This is just phenomenal for not just, in my opinion, all skin types, but especially if you are dry, you are textured on your cheek area, because it's literally just like putting water on your skin. And I need to go ahead and just clear up something in my, I think it was that same video where I talked about certain products I own that I really disliked. Oh, by the way, I'm using Rose Glow, which is, if you're a light, fair, light, medium skin tone, this is going to be like a barely there flushed pink. So again, we're trying to keep the skin very mild, but very fresh looking. But anyways, in that particular video, I talked about how 9 times out of 10, I prefer a cream blush over a liquid. And that's true, unless it's in the case of these. These are just like the superior blushes to me out of any blush. Like, I'm talking cream, powder, liquid. These are just it for me. So a lot of people, when I said, oh, generally I'll pick a cream over a liquid, well, if it's any other brand, like if I'm just shopping at Sephora, most of the time I'm not super intrigued by other brands' liquid blushes, because I just think these cannot be beat. So that's what I meant in that video. I had a lot of people being like, you pushed, Daniel Sandler watercolors onto us, and now you're saying you only like cream blushes? Like, let's go ahead and put it in reverse, Terry, because that was not the road that I was going down. Basically, yeah, I will never give these up. They are just the most skin-like, youthful. I think it's one of the most underrated products ever. I'm still slightly happy that this is like, I feel like Daniel Sandler watercolors are our corner in the makeup community. I don't know. I just feel like we are the cult following for Daniel Sandler watercolors here. And by the way, I still have a 20% off coupon for Look Fantastic for Daniel Sandler watercolors. I always link that down below. But I mean, can we take a look here? Again, this eliminated the use of having to go in with any type of extra glow product on the cheek, because most of the Daniel Sandler watercolors have a nice reflective property to them. Very sheer, skin-like looking blush. So at this point, we've literally used what, like 4 products? And boom, we're done with the face. We look nice, we look healthy. It looks like our real skin, That's kind of the point of this. I never feel like a routine like this enhances my dry areas, my dry patches, my texture. It's just always such a mild, fresh look. I am going to add just a touch of powder because I am going to be outside today. I'm using the Beauty Bakerie's flour powder. This is a pretty mattifying powder, but I mean, I don't know if you can see how much I have in the cap here. Very, very minimal product. And I'm really just gonna use that on my under eye and then like my T-zone area. Okay, last thing here. I wanted to talk about eye makeup because if you have extremely dry and patchy, eczema prone eyelids, there's nothing worse than the feeling of a powder eyeshadow on your eyes. Really, there's nothing worse than the feeling of anything on your eyes. But after like week 2 of just having constantly puffy red eyelids and you're wanting to do a little something something, this is kind of the route that I'll take. So first of all, powder eyeshadow is like a hell no for me anytime my eczema is flaring up on my eyes. So what I like to do is take something like my Mercier Caviar Stick and Caramel. This is just a nice soft brown tone. I'll take it and use it as a base on my eyelid. I feel like the cream also does a good job of concealing any extra redness that might still be on there. It just feels so much better. Like it's so much more movable and creamy and fresh feeling on the eyelids compared to, I also think the ingredients that are in a lot of powder eyeshadows really irritate the eyes further. So this is just kind of like a foolproof way for me to get a nice soft eye look. So I'll just use this as like my all over base shade first. Is anyone else's YouTube recommended page wilding out? I cannot describe the amount of videos that I've been recommended that I did not ask for. But then I get suckered in. This morning it was how I became engaged 2 months later after I met a guy on a cruise ship. I'm not interested, but also I am. So it's my fault for clicking. Let's add a touch of liner. I'm going to use Wayne Goss's Precious Opal. I'm just going to do like the thinnest line possible and kind of blend that out. And finally, you could definitely stop here, but like I said, I want to do a little something, a little pop. So I'm going to take my Bodyography glitter pigment and sparkler. This is kind of like the creme de la creme of any type of just champagne-based pigment. It is so pretty. All I'm going to do is go bloop and bloop, and you can make that noise too if you'd like. And we're just going to have a little pop of something on the center here. And then I gradually just like fade it outward just so we don't have like a random fingerprint on the middle of the eye. Nice, soft, delicate, pretty, just ethereal. I'm gonna use Monsieur Big mascara from Lancome. I've used this in the past and I can tell I'm going to like it. It just needs to dry out a little bit more. Like wet mascaras are my arch nemesis. Like they just don't work on my lashes. But I can just tell if this dries out slightly, it's gonna be a good one. A little pillow talk to finish off the lips. And then I'm gonna use Wayne Goss's Hibiscus lip gloss. Okay, I'm a little frosty on the lips, but who cares? The point is that I love this. It just looks like my skin. It looks like I just woke up, put a little bit of concealer on, a little flashy blush, and then popped like very minimal eyeshadow on. So, yeah, this is it. This is how I do my makeup. My skin's flaring up, when I really don't want to wear makeup, but I kind of need to. You get the vibe. I hope this helped you out. I hope it gave you some product recommendations. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'm going to talk or list substitutes down below that you can use, some drugstore options as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.